And I'm like, well, from what I can tell, he apparently wanted that to happen. And people would say, well, what are you trying to say by saying that the Trump administration wanted something like that to happen over the next 4 to 10 or 30 years? It's like, because what the Trump administration knows, the larger global scope of things, if anyone's going to be kind to a dwindling, white Anglo-Saxon community on a global scale, it's your African-American neighbor. So people would say, well, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. What are you saying? I'm saying that deeper think tanks have had a chance to really have some deep conversations about things 30 years out. Like, people don't understand that, like, we're light years away from Atari. You know what I mean? We're light years away from Atari. Like we're literally at a point where everything that everything a corporation was able to do 30 years ago that only a corporation could do, the average person can do in their basement now. The technology is so widespread in that way now that what I'm saying is that they looked at it from the standpoint of, we would rather see the African American community blossom economically and be a bridge committee for us into Africa as a country for the purposes of securing American hegemony resource-wise, than run the risk of having to beg the Chinese on our knees for it.
I want to talk a little bit about the resources of Africa.
Well,
yeah, did you notice that? I would like to talk about the resources of Africa. I was wondering if you could just touch on that briefly.
I'm sorry, one moment.
The resources of Africa, because, they do seem to be targeting African Americans. And Africa, people in Africa as well, the continent of Africa.
Well, I will say this. The cruel reality of what we're looking at here is that
I'm not trying to
America.
I'm not trying to.
I'm sorry. What's that?
I'm not trying to imply anything. I'm just saying, what are the resources of Africa?
And I'm going to touch on that right now. So you can't have cell phones without coltan, bauxite, aluminum. You can't have steel without some of the other raw materials. Essentially, rare earth metals are the difference between being a third world country or being a highly technologically advanced first world nation.
Okay.
And basically, it's not only that. It's if Africa closes its doors, Europe starves or has to buy from China and Russia. And people don't understand that when you start to ask yourself, what crops can Europe grow year-round? There are no crops Europe can grow year-round. And then people will say, indoor farming. It's like they're not scaled up enough where they can avoid starvation and famine. Well, they can buy from America. It's like, not with the just-in-time system. Not with the just-in-time system. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. And now with the coronavirus, it's even worse. So one of the larger dynamics is that when people start to use the term in relation to decoupling from Africa, rubber, natural plants, herbs, other plant material, fibrous material that's required for making medicine, and other forms of plastic. I mean, it's like oil, natural gas. I mean, There's more natural gas in Africa than there is natural gas that has been burned. There are more natural gas deposits in Africa than there is natural gas that has been collectively burned. So people say that makes no sense. I'm like, you have to go look for those numbers. But the point is that it's not just that. It's the stark, cruel reality that Europe is not. Well, let me say this, and this is just a really simple thing. I think it's the Mercator. Give me 1 second. Yes, I am. Take that. Thank you, kind sir. Hey, I'm going to chase you. You also. In the office. Don't mind me, everybody. Okay, so I'm looking up a number for you, everybody. The number I'm looking up is in relation to. Okay, here we are. Mercator map. Mercator projection map.
I guess okay, what I was getting at was I was kind of wondering. I guess I was trying to get.
Oh no, I'm gonna spell this out for everybody. Just give me 1 second. Circular UN map. Okay. Let's see. Circular map. No, circular map. Circular UN map. That's not gonna do it. It doesn't matter. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna tell you. So from the North Pole to the South Pole, right? Let's play a game. It's a math game. It's a real simple math game. So let's say you have a circle. In the middle of that circle is the North Pole. In the middle of that circle, and not the middle, but the halfway point from the middle to the actual edge of that circle is the equator. And then the actual edge of that equator on the outside, right, that would be the North Pole. Here's something to understand. The top and the side are cold, right? But in the middle, that's where your sun belt is. So molecularly, or just molecular cohesion occurs more on the equator, and it fans out from the north to the south. And from the south to the north. It fans out from the equator north to south. It fans out from the equator south to north. So it's moving from the south to the north if we're talking about to the pole. Now people might say, what are you talking about? What I'm talking about is the further you get away from the equator, the more complex and high volatility or high activity molecules form. You get what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that only certain elements form from the equator moving out to the north, and only certain elements form from the equator moving out to the south, from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, from the equator. When you get to Europe, the soil quality loses a content of the amount of hydrogen and nitrogen in the oxygen in the atmosphere that bonds with the bacteria in the soil. So when you start to notice that there's more cold air, when you move away from the magnetic phenomenon that happened from the pole, down from the North Pole to the South, you get different elements that form, but you also get different bacteria. That's why don't worry, I'm going to answer that original question. Okay. Which is why whenever you get to a large scale desert, you have an area that has no microbes to precipitate cyclically from the ground to the atmosphere to keep that symbiosis going. Most people don't know that some of your weather patterns are determined by microbes. Did you know that? Some of your weather patterns are determined by microbes, which is strange, but I digress. Or microbes in the atmosphere. But the point that I'm getting at is that Europe, not America, Europe is a country, or it's a landmass where it's located in a very unfortunate place where it does not have the seasonal consistency to produce crops, which is why when you start moving further towards away from the prime meridian to the east, countries like Russia and other places, Southeast Asia and Eurasia, they're able to produce more crops over longer periods of time. And the reality with Europe is, in relation to issues with the soil and electromagnetic phenomenon on the ground, the cruel reality is that Africa is the breadbasket of Europe. So it's not just the raw materials for producing technology, it's the food. It's the food. You know what I mean? Like people, like if you, let me just Google that for you real quick.
Let's talk about
just 1 second. Just 1 second. Amount of food produced in Africa sold in Europe.
What about,
I'm just looking at the numbers.
Gold that are mined as well.
I'm sorry. What's that? Yeah. So essentially, it's a $3 billion agricultural business, and that was back in 2000 and that was back in 2012. Mm-hmm. So if it was a $300 billion business,
so would you say that it's an area of interest for them to take over?
From what I understand, let me check again. How many ghost cities in Africa from China?
I have no idea. I don't know the answer to that question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hold on 1 second.
If you guys can hear me in the background, I'm ironing my painting.
No, it's fine.
I posted a painting in my artist blog, Awesome Blossoms, and I'm ironing.
So let me just.
All right, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So essentially what you have here is they're saying there's two. It says the first two. Now this is from 2017, April, right? April the 19th, 2017. But one of the more recent reports I heard was anywhere from 20 to 30 different megacities that are supposedly in Africa. But essentially one of the two areas that they're really looking after is Angola and a few other places in South Africa. And a few other places. They're trying to really get into the Delta Niger Congo, but right now, because of the virus, a lot of Chinese people are kind of being purged, with the exception of maybe Somalia. But now, I think the Chinese, like we talked. Remember how we talked about this almost last year? We talked about not almost last year. We talked about this a few months ago, where I was saying how it wasn't going to take much for a situation for Chinese troops being stuck in a situation where they can't get back home from Africa and they're trying to figure their situation out. And it's already starting to happen in Somalia, because when you ask yourself, let's see, Chinese Somalian army base
as well, who he posts to my blog, my Facebook wall daily about what's going on in India in regards to the Chinese. I mean, this stuff is just incredible.
Oh. I pity the Chinese in India. Or I pity the Chinese who have to do security on the Indian border, because it is just a flaming hot. Listen, that situation was so embarrassing. It was such an epic failure that I kid you not. Listen, it was such an epic failure that this is basically what the end result was. The end result ended up being that you had 300, and I've already talked about it, you had 300 guys from the Chinese military get their butts kicked by, 100 guys from the Indian military. And it's one of those things where it's like, long story short though, it's unfortunate that the Chinese are having the actual Chinese citizens are having to put up with this attempted, this is an attempt, it's an attempted rape. It's an attempted rape. And people say, what do you mean it's an attempted rape? They're attempting to rape the culture again, because now they're looking to start off. Listen, I would hate to be a Chinese young person coming back from China, or coming back to China, or just graduated from America, because now the Chinese government is directly targeting them. Because they're like, you are the people who have seen that we're full of crap and we're lying 24/7, and you're the most dangerous group of people for us right now, because you can do the most damage.
Wow.
So,
Wow. So, amazing. I'm telling